Hello everyone! The new 20th episode of Skibidi Multiverse from Dom Studio finally came out, and I can promise you, it was something incredible and absolutely unforgettable. And now I'm going to do a complete and most detailed analysis of this episode, where we will find every Easter egg and every secret that was hidden from us. I'll show you all the things that definitely no one else has noticed. And I'm going to build some theories about what's going on here and tell it to you. And also show you something interesting related to the Titans. Why did the Skibidi toilets try to blow up Big Ben in this city? What kinds of new upgrades did Titan Drillman get? And what did he look like? And also, who controls all the Skibidi toilets? And why Skibidi Scientist is not the most important one in the league? All of this you will learn from me today, so watch this video to the very end, so you don't miss anything cool. Now get your tea and snacks ready, it's going to be a lot of fun and interesting. Let's go! The episode starts with the POV cameraman holding a tablet with a message that goes like, "Help requested, Titan Speakerman coming." Then we see the same city from the earlier episodes and a tower with a big clock that looks like Big Ben. A lot of Skibidi are flying around it, and based on this electronic clock and a huge number of explosives, they are going to blow up this structure. But what are they doing it for? And why is the Alliance trying to stop them from doing it? Is this tower really that important to each side of the war? I have a hunch that this building is some sort of time force repeater that enhances the abilities of clockmen in some areas, and that's why the Skibidi are trying to get rid of this building in order to weaken one of the Alliance races and try to take full control of this city. The only thing I don't understand is why didn't they do this earlier? After all, the Alliance already abandoned this city in episode 4? And either this is some strange coincidence, or the toilets did not know about the true function of this facility before. Now, let's take a look at the Skibidi toilets that fly around here. Here we see 2 helicopter toilets wearing black masks and glasses, which are supposed to save them from TV men's flow. Also, behind Big Ben, there is a toilet on a huge flying machine. We have already seen a similar type of Skibidi in the same 4th episode. They flew to the scene of the battle along with the infected Titan cameraman. It's hard to say exactly what function it serves, but I'm guessing it's some sort of cargo plane or something. On top of that, there are UFO Skibidi flying overhead, which we've seen many times before, as well as 2 welder toilets, but they're different from what they looked like in episode 10. Namely, in case you haven't noticed, they have no legs and are able fly. They weld a structure made of metal balks. These balks are brought to the site by another Skibidi, who looks exactly like the one that attacked POV in the 1st episode, except that he's missing his saw now. And in this scene, it's getting clear where it had gone to. It looks like another Skibidi rooster took it from this poor guy and has now started bullying him for any misstep. And the Alliance agents, namely Drill Woman, POV Cameraman, Alarm Clockman, Big Clockman, and Large Speakerman, are watching this whole show. And what's especially funny is this shot where Clockman is leaning his binoculars against his clock dial and trying to see something there, pretending to actually have eyes. Finally, Titan Speakerman bursts into the party, and together with him we can see this city from above. And in slow motion right there, we can notice something unusual. Like some agent, presumably cameraman, is suspended on a rope, and next to him there is a Skibidi mutant in a black suit who did this to him. And what do you guys think it looks like? So, as the Titan flies to the battle site, Big Clockman enters the scene. He walks to the edge of the roof and stops time. And since the last time we saw him, he's been able to really pump up his abilities. Just look at this. In the 1st episode, he was only able to stop time for 25 seconds, whereas now the agents have a full minute to spare, which is more than double. And it's likely that in addition to the duration of this time stoppage, he's also increased the area of its effect. This guy is looking more and more like the time agent who appeared in the 15th episode. And I have a theory that it's the same character. And this Clockman is him, only in the future, when he's strong enough to travel through time. And what's able to prove this theory is the fact that they have the same long cape, black suit underneath, as well as exactly the same ties. I mean, look at this. The patterns on them are exactly the same. I think we'll be seeing more changes in this guy soon, and he's going to look more like him. So, let's get back to the episode. Clockman stopped time in the area, and it's actually not very clear to me why these Skibidi aren't equipped with the clocks that prevent time stoppage. After all, episode 6 showed how they got their hands on this technology. Maybe these are way too expensive to manufacture and they can't be produced for all toilets. But anyway, just as the Titan was about to deactivate Big Ben, the magnetic Skibidi flew up to the agents. It looks like the toilet from episode 5, but they added 2 more magnets to it. Before large Speakerman destroys it with a sonic knife throw, he manages to incapacitate the clockman, so the time stoppage gets interrupted. Titan managed to get only one of the explosive charges deactivated, and at that moment, a missile of some prohibitive power flew into him and toppled Titan. And that missile was fired by the new masked Skibidi. Once he lands on the ground, we can notice that it is actually consisted of 2 Skibidi that are joined together as a whole with the usage of these metal fasteners. And because of this, the flying Skibidi can carry the floating toilet over long distances. Those Skibidi are a reference to SCP-035, so they can be a mask of comedy or tragedy. But in this case, we see 2 masks with 2 different emotions all at once. One of them contains the black liquid flowing out of the holes, which confirms this reference. The floating Skibidi has 3 pairs of chainsaws, firearms, and 2 huge metal claws. He also has a large shield similar to the one the big toilet used to have in episode 12, but this one looks much stronger, and we will also see that later. The second Skibidi has helicopter blades and a jetpack, which allows him to fly in the air, as well as transport his huge and probably heavy friend with him. For the melee combat, he is equipped with 2 really great-looking axes. And between them, there is a huge cannon from which he fired the first shot at the Titan. And next to it, the wheels can be seen. I'm assuming that their purpose is getting around on the dry land. And right underneath his toilet, he has a missile battery, which he immediately used. And oh my God, how powerful those missiles are! Even large Speakermen drop the head into his hands in fear for the Titan. Then, after the dust has been settled, we can discern the Titan, who seems to have gotten pretty banged up. The speaker on his head has been partially destroyed. And mind you, something like this has never happened before in the series. But he is still alive, and quite ready to keep fighting. Having his axe taken out in his hands, he tries to hit the Skibidi who wears the comedy mask with it. But the shield turned out to be really strong, so not even a chip was being left on it after such powerful blow. Skibidi shoots from his firearm, but the weapon no longer deals any damage. So then Skibidi decides that he can hurt the Speakerman more efficiently with the usage of his head. But unfortunately, he misses a little, and the Titan almost cuts his head off. But he only hits the mask in the end, destroying it completely. And now we can finally see the face of this Skibidi toilet. To be honest, it reminds me a lot of the ghoul from the series of games called Fallout. They basically look the same to me. There's probably something like that under that mask. I think his face has been corroded by the black liquid from the mask that he's wearing. At this point, the other agents find themselves surrounded by the toilets flying around the big clock. But they're also joined by a Skibidi with miniguns and a strange tank on the toilet cistern. Cameraman notices a Skibidi mutant with a detonator on the roof in front of him. By the way, during the Titan's flight, this roof was visible and no one could be seen on it, which means that the Skibidi mutant climbed up on it during Titan's fight against SCP-Skibidi just to get the agent's attention later. He presses the button and the countdown to the explosion begins. Immediately afterwards, he starts defiantly running away, and all of it actually looks like a trap. If they just wanted to blow up the clock, why do all this set up though? I assume that on top of that, they want to get rid of as many special agents as possible in this case. Drillwoman, who was sent by the clockman to intercept the mutant. She fires her grappling drill, pulling herself towards another building. And then a pretty spectacular chase scene begins. And honestly, I can't help but notice how well it was staged. I really love that with each episode, Dom Studio makes his content more and more detailed and qualitative. But I got distracted for a second, so let's go back to the actual episode. While Drillwoman is running after the Skibidi with the detonator, Titan Speakerman is trying to deactivate Big Ben, but the Skibidi ghouls didn't go anywhere, and they won't let him do it for sure. Titan fires a laser from his core, but it doesn't penetrate the shield, though the laser proves powerful enough to move that huge Skibidi. Drillwoman jumps on the mutant, knocking it down and giving it a couple of smacky slaps, and finally getting her hands on this certainly valuable item that can be used to stop the explosion. That button disables the explosives, doesn't it? Well, it was pretty reckless to press the button with the sticker on it without removing the paper first. It literally implies something like "take me off" with its whole look, so Drillwoman indeed takes it off, although it's too late. And while she's thinking about what she's done, this Skibidi mutant comes up behind her and knocks her over, after which two more mutants in gas masks, which are similar to the gas masks from the game CS:GO, come up behind her. One of them is holding a bat, and the other one has a shotgun, just like the mutant from episode 15. Big Clockman notices that something has gone wrong, and the timer is counting down even faster, and he has to gather all his strength and willpower in order to do one last heroic deed and stop time again to prevent tragedy. And having taken this strange position, he kind of blacks out? I guess not. And if my theory is right, this guy's gonna be fine. Maybe because of what just happened to him, he'll have to replace some parts, and he'll look even more like this agent in the future. Anyway, time has been stopped, and there are only 2 seconds left on the timer. By the way, at this point you can see this toilet that was left here. It was knocked out earlier by the big clockman, who hit him right in the scary Skibidi's face, and what I can't understand is why he had 2 miniguns and just walked over and let himself get slapped. I think some Skibidi have an unhealthy craving for smacky slaps. Hey man, can you give me a smacky slap? No problem, bro. Thanks. So, thanks to the time stoppage, Drillwoman manages to avoid a fight with 3 mutant Skibidi, although based on the position of this mutant's head, something like that happened, and I'm sure this haughty girl would have come out of this mess victorious. But now there's an opportunity to really prank those Skibidi. Imagine the look on their faces when you're fighting with just one girl, and then in an instant all 3 of you are sitting on barrels that are about to detonate. And then Drillwoman jumps out of the window in the superhero movie style, without even looking at the explosion. At this time, Titan Speakerman finally detonates the second piece of explosives from Big Ben, thus finally securing the city. What's odd, though, is that these Skibidi, as well as the regular toilets, are not equipped with those clocks. By the way, in favor of the fact that this clock tower plays a big role, is that the time on Big Ben and on both Clockman's dials completely coincide, and I think this confirms my theory. Unfortunately, the big Clockman's strength ran out pretty fast, and SCP Skibidi reacted quickly by throwing a grappling hook with a chain on the Titan, and using this mechanism, he started to bring him to the ground. But I don't see any mounting with which he could throw the chain, though. Maybe his arms are flexible enough to untwist and throw it, I don't really know. In any case, the Titan finds himself in a position from which it is impossible to get out alive, because we must realize that if the first shot from this cannon crippled him so much, it is quite likely that the second shell would have destroyed him completely. And now, just what villains usually love doing, they start stalling instead of finishing the job quickly. The SCP helicopter slowly approaches the Titan, but doesn't fire at him, and at that moment a creepy sound is being emitted. We've already heard it before. I told you about it while analyzing one of the Furious leaks. And it's the upgraded Titan Drillman. This guy's face completely epitomizes the situation this Skibidi is in at this point. Titan Drillman is coming out of the ground, and he's become truly colossal in size now. He's probably the biggest creature in the Skibidi toilet universe right now. Dom Studio showed this picture with all the Titans ranked by their size. And it shows that Drillman now greatly surpasses all the Titans, and most likely, all the Skibidi. It is likely that later we will see someone comparable to him, and it may be far from a Skibidi toilet. But I'll tell you more on that later. In this scene, you are able to fully observe the whole city, which is divided by the river into 2 parts. And the coastal part of the city, where the battle takes place, is almost completely demolished and turned into ruins. You can also see that the flying Skibidi with the mask has some sort of fan at the back, but it's not working at the moment because it's needed for acceleration only. So, the Skibidi toilets start firing at Titan Drillman, but unfortunately for them, it was Titan Speakerman who felt the whole potential of those missiles, and not our Drillman Chad, who simply doesn't care for any of these. They do absolutely no damage to him. And I think it's also because of the new strong metal alloys that were created exclusively for him. And while the first Skibidi waits for his soon demise, we can notice that the houses are left floating in the air. Even the Earth itself seems to be scared of this guy's emergence and moves far away. So even the Skibidi's rear fan starts spinning with as if it was frightened to its metal bones. Drillman opens his head drill and destroys the Skibidi helicopter with it. After that, he fires 2 harpoons from his chest into the second toilet, and electrical sparks get themselves flying out of the Skibidi's head, just like it happened in the Skibidi scientist's case from the last episode. Also, his glowing eyes don't ever get switched off, like it was with the mutant Skibidi in episode 13 after the spear was thrown at him. So first of all this tells us that the Skibidi with glowing eyes are robots after all, although I still had my doubts while analyzing episode 17. And second of all, they can't simply be destroyed by the headshot now. Maybe some of their vital organs have been moved to another place, in the cistern for instance. Either way, it won't help him when the Titan drags him to his drills. He tries to saw through the chains, but obviously nothing comes out of it and there's nothing that gets left of him. POV cameraman flushes a toilet that has a circular saw and a red tank on the side. But the only Skibidi that had a saw was the one with a white-colored tank. And add to it that the saw was also on the other side of this tank. Also, in this shot you can see that the city is partially flooded, but this is not related to the appearance of Drillman, as it may seem at first glance, because the water was here before. Also, notice the rather strange clock on the helicopter, which does not coincide with the clock on the Big Ben, where 2 cameramen climbed up to. And one of them no ordinary cameraman, just take a look at his tie. He looks pretty much like Simp Cameraman to me. It seems like the guy decided to pull himself together and finally take charge instead of running after TV Woman, and maybe soon he'll successfully become a Giga-Chad. So he checks everything to make sure there's nothing left inside the tower. In the meantime, Titan Drillman praises Titan Speakerman for the work that he's done, and just look how funny it looks. Drillman's hand is practically of the size of the whole Titan Speakerman's body. That's just crazy. Now let's analyze this Titan and see what kinds of new upgrades he has. The first thing that obviously catches the eye is his head, and unlike the one he used to have before, it apparently does not perform the function of digging. This is impossible because of the 2 horns that appeared to be on the sides, as well as because of the mechanism that imitates the opening of the mouth. His body has also become even more robust than it already was before. You can also see in this scene that he has deliberately opened his mechanisms, and considering the fact that the missiles did not do any kind of damage towards them at all, they seem to be very reliable, and no spear blows will probably not harm them in any point now. In addition to that, on his back you can notice a huge weapon that kind of reminds me of a pickaxe. I find it most likely that Titan can now switch the drills on his hands, the way he already did in the earlier stage of his modification, and fight with the help of this melee weapon. In general, he reminds me a lot of a demon called Cyber Mancubus from the game Doom Eternal. And if you add a couple more drills to him and repaint him in color red, 2 of them will practically turn out to be indistinguishable. Now we're getting transported straight to the base, but it's not a Skibidi base as we'll find out later. The action here takes place right after the event when Skibidi scientist escaped from the Titans in episode 19. There's a speaker detached from his toilet that has a cavity in it, and there's a mini Skibidi sitting in it. I honestly don't know how he didn't get splattered all over the walls of this container after that explosion, considering he doesn't even have any seatbelts here. This bald little guy has a slightly different design than his big toy does. Instead of a speaker, he has a small shield and 4 tiny cannons, and he also doesn't have metal tentacles. But here you can see that he has the same red eye that could be seen on his robot copy, and I can't be really sure whether he is the original or not. Although based on what we'll about to see next, the original in his truest sense may not exist at all. The 2 mutant Skibidi say something to the scientist, but their speech is impossible to comprehend. Maybe they told him that someone important is waiting for him. What is clear is that Skibidi scientist is trying to justify himself to them, which obviously doesn't sound like he's in charge here, even among Skibidi themselves. The Skibidi agents go with him, escorting him down the corridor with a lot of doors. One of them opens when an agent walks in, and we see a Skibidi monster. It looks like Momo from episode 17 that had a few more eyes added this time. It's unclear how strong she is because except for the claws, eyes, and armor plates on the toilet, she has nothing else to offer. But considering that she killed 2 Skibidi agents with weapons before, this monster seems to be quite strong. One of the agents isn't in a black suit like the others, by the way, but in a gray one. A bunch of nasty tentacles fall out of the next doors, but you can't see who they belong to because of the darkness. The agent calls the elevator, and pressing the buttons is accompanied by these sounds. which is a reference to the game called Half-Life. The little scientist with a sad face gets into the elevator and goes down into this unusual room. Just observe this look on his face as he stares at the person on top, clearly in fear. When the camera goes up, you can see these numbered barrels with a very interesting inscription on them: Umbrella Corporation. This is clearly a big, juicy reference to the Resident Evil series of games and movies, and it's likely that these barrels contain another species of mutant. In one of my previous analyses, I assumed that Skibidi with glowing eyes can be zombies, but as it turned out, it was not actually this way. But a share of truth in this assumption can still be held approvable. After all, if this corporation exists in this universe, then my assumption about the existence of zombies was correct, although they may not be Skibidi. Either way, it is the Alpha who stands before us in the moment. That's her actual name if you are to believe the episode description. And if her name is Alpha and she even has a crown, it means that she is the most important and powerful of all the rivals of the Alliance. I'm guessing that the Skibidi toilets are just one of her projects to take over the world. And apparently this project was one of her most successful so far, which is why there are so many of them. It turns out that I was right in my assumption that soon we will see someone who stands above the scientist, and that Skibidi Scientist is the head of Skibidi Toilets only, which should all be subservient to the Alpha. Let's listen again to what she said to this old dude.
But you could at least try to last longer, instead of counting on your old tricks. Keep their titans busy with your horror toilets, or whatever you call them. Soon there will be no place for them to retreat or upgrade. Clocks will fall.
Now we know exactly why he flew away from the battlefield with such a satisfied look on his face. He didn't expect to actually destroy the Titans because his job was to at least delay them so that they wouldn't have time to save the clock from destruction. And I think that by the clock she means this exact tower. But why is it so important to her though? Does this tower contain all the power of the clockmen? And once it is destroyed, they will all be completely powerless. Then I don't understand why it wasn't destroyed earlier, right after the agents retreated in the second episode. Plus, the delay of the Titans in the 19th episode didn't make any sense to me, because Titan Speaker Man, who flew in to help, was almost destroyed during that battle. And if it wasn't for the upgraded Titan Drillman, things would have gone much differently. I am also pretty much sure that this whole plan to destroy the clock will not succeed in the end. And now I will explain why exactly do I think so. If this big clockman and this time agent on the spider is the same character, it means that in the future, clockmen, for one reason or another, did not actually lose any of their powers, either because the enemies of the Alliance still failed to destroy the clock, or maybe because of the new race that will arrive to help the Alliance. And then the Alpha will have to find some other ways to counter the Alliance forces. So now let's speculate on what might be awaiting us in the next episode. In case you haven't noticed, one of the Titans was not present in the battle for Big Ben, namely Titan Cameraman, despite the fact that right after the big Skibidi explosion, Titan Speakerman went to save the clock. Which means that in addition to that, there was another attack taking place in another location that required the Titans' help. And in the 21st episode, we will get actually shown how Cameraman helped the agents in parallel to what happened in the 20th episode. And that's where we might finally be shown a new race. Well, at least that's what I'm mostly expecting to happen right now. Okay, and now let's kind of sum up everything what we know so far. There are two opposing sides in this universe that are at war one with another. And we know for sure that the first side is the Alliance, and the other one is the Skibidi Toilets. But they are only a part of those forces that are fighting against the Alliance. And just like the Alliance, they will most likely have new races in the nearest future. And it's also quite possible that this series will soon develop into something more than just a Skibidi Toilets multiverse. Given that this world has an umbrella corporation apparently, that was focused on creating different biological mutants in the original game and movie series, it seems highly likely to me that we'll see someone like Tyrant from Resident Evil and other monsters like him soon. And if you enjoyed today's video of mine, be sure to subscribe to my channel so you don't miss my new analyses. And that was me, ISO Toilet. See ya!